wanted to make a huge splash when it came to secondary screen usage. This was actually the very first time that the use of secondary screens, watching video and information about the Olympics, was actually greater on the device than it was on the television. So it was a really big thing for them to make sure that they could deliver this in a personalized manner. They used MarkLogic to actually drive that information, allow journalists to provide information at the top line, right? They used their own video encoding process here on the bottom, and then it was all brought together. So MarkLogic had the content, they had the video, and then we brought it all together. Now, what was a little unique was MarkLogic was so fast, we had to slow it down because it was beating the video to the output too quickly, right? When I mentioned scale, that's very interesting, and I'll just let you read through these, but in a nutshell, 25,000 transactions per second, 2.8 petabytes served in a single day. Don't let anybody tell you NoSQL can't scale, right? Because that's what you're going to hear in your companies, right? It can scale. It's pretty darn impressive what this stuff can do. Let's look at another one. I know there's a couple of financial folks here, top 5 trading bank in the world. Derivative trades, they handle about 65% of all the derivative trades around the world. That's a 24/7 process, never goes down. It's rare that we would say we're going to come in and remove a relational database. In this particular instance, because they had 20 different silos or instances of Sybase running this environment, they literally would have to take it down once a week just to do maintenance on it. They could never understand what their real risk element was. Think about derivative trades, right? And how challenging those can be, how much money we're talking about, and a bank of this size doesn't really know what its risk is at any point in time. Because they've got traders all around the world making trades possibly against one another. They replaced those 20 instances with one instance of MarkLogic. They went from 10 DBAs down to 1 DBA. NoSQL can scale. NoSQL's got a great fit in this environment as you start to bring disparate data together.
So in that case, was it working as a transactional database or?
So in this case, yes, a transactional database. That's right. Last one, top 5 health insurance firm, looking at trying to bring together 500 disparate sets of data to serve 50 applications downstream. And this is going to be set across a 1,000-node Hadoop environment. So I know, Rick's got a headache. He's got this look like, really? Big company, a lot of legacy data, right? But being able to bring it together, they estimate, and this isn't in production yet, they estimate that they are going to save over 75% of their ETL costs by going down this path, because they don't have to go through this heavy extract, transform, and load.
After the data passes through MarkLogic, right? The rendering of the data, does it render data to all the existing applications? How does it?
So question is, after the data goes through MarkLogic, how does the rendering of the data happen as it serves up to the other applications, right? You want to talk on that?
Well, sure. I mean, the MarkLogic, again, in most cases, it's not just passing through MarkLogic. We're actually ingesting it and then feeding it out to applications. But there are, I think we have a dozen or more established ships with the product kind of APIs for application integration. So in most cases, you have a legacy application that's looking for something, like looking for a REST endpoint. That's something we can simply just replace, right? We plug it in with our existing REST endpoint. They get the application gets the information that it's expecting. Just now they're getting a lot more of it from all the disparate systems that you've now been able to connect. If it's a legacy application, oftentimes that's when we have to go back to the previous model where we do the metadata ingestion, and then we serve back out to the legacy application the data in the format that it's expecting to see it, but we're processing the data within MarkLogic.
Yes?
So if my understanding is correct. So if I have already existing data like in Oracle or
I'm going to repeat it as you go. So if you have all this existing data in Oracle or, okay.
Yeah, relational database. So if I don't want to move my data, can MarkLogic just sit on top of it? And,
So if I don't want to move my data, can MarkLogic just sit on top of it? Well, or we can have pointers going into it.
Right.
So what benefit does it provide me?
Say that again.
What is the advantage of having that?
What's the advantage of having that? Well, if you're going to try to bring that data together with other disparate systems, that's really what you would want to do. I mean, if it's already living in a system and you're not doing anything with it besides serving it, I'd leave it the way it is. But if I want to bring that data down and then I've got other data sets that I want to bring in and marry those together and perhaps do BI or reports or whatever, that's where MarkLogic's going to come into play.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how the ETL, I mean, conceptually I get it, that it's no schema, right? So you don't have to...
But schema agnostic.
Schema agnostic,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Schema agnostic. So you save on the trouble of having to comply with a fixed model and all that. But can you elaborate a little bit on how the ETL effort actually goes down?
Can you elaborate? Yeah, I hear you. Can you elaborate a little on how the ETL effort actually goes down? I'm going to let you do that.
Well, again, we go back to the schema agnostic and the fact that you don't need to do data modeling for ingest and indexing. So in a traditional ETL model, you have to define your data, and your data has to be transformed into a very, very specific format in order for any RDBMS to understand what it's looking at. Within MarkLogic, we don't care. We're looking at a file, we're looking at a document, we're doing indexing on whatever we see, and indexing any textual data, numeric data, strings, whatever you're throwing at us, we'll simply index it. You don't have to go through that modeling process. So instead of having to do a full ETL on all of everything that's flowing through to comply with a specific schema or a specific data model, we allow you to just pour information into MarkLogic in a siphon.
Right. But you still have to have business people provide the mapping and say this relates to this and this is what this data means and so on.
Sure.
Right.
That doesn't go away. So
There's
That-
correct.
So we can
Yeah.
shift that to the application layer as opposed to the data layer, right?
Uh-huh.
So think of, I hate to use the term because it always opens a can of worms, but it's almost a data lake, right? Where you have, MarkLogic acts as a data lake where you can just throw everything into it, and then you shift the business logic and the business rules to an application layer.
So it's almost like ELT
Right.
versus
Yeah.
ETL.
There we go.
So we're enriching the data.
Right.
Once we get it in, we're going to enrich the data. You can enrich the data on
Yeah.
as you ingest if you so choose, or you can enrich the data on the way out. So, but as Sean was saying, you don't have to do all that upfront modeling, which can be the painful part of the overall ETL process.
And the application layer that you're referring to, can you provide a few examples of what that application layer is? Where the transformations actually happen?
So let's see, a good one.
Do we have the handheld somewhere back there? The handheld mic?
It's on the same screen as the computers.
I'll just talk
Oh,
louder.
so it
I've
won't
got
work?
this.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't see it here.
Sorry, I'll just talk a little bit louder.
No,
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so a recent case, one of the Fortune 500 company we're working with now, the 87 different data sources that I was referring to earlier. So in that case, they have literally 87 completely separate types of data that they're bringing in. Some of it's RDBMS data, some of it's open or linked open data, some of it's publicly available data that we're just downloading off the web and throwing in. Some of it's actually coming from enriched data from MarkLogic, which is one of our partners to do data enrichment, metadata enrichment, and semantic tagging. The application that we're writing is actually to query across all of those. We can build in the alerting tools for certain thresholds that are instead of being against one stack of information, now it's against the overall stack. We're bringing in or combining. In this case, it's biological data. Let's just say that. And I want to search for one particular protein strand. But I can pull the protein strand and I can look at or search for a a reference type, and it's going to pull up that what biological entity the protein strand is contained in, what its growth patterns are, what this particular at this stage of development it's at this point.
Yeah, you're good. You're on.
All right. What area of the country or whatever area of the world, and I can actually do a geospatial map on where that where that particular protein strand or that biological is located, what the temperatures were for it to get to that stage. I mean, there's all of that information is coming from multiple sources. So the business logic is, rather than having to go through and do individual queries against all of these separate sources and then manually collate it, I'm bringing it all into one centralized location, whether, again, via pointer or via direct ingest and enrichment, and showing that information to the to the end user. If it's let's say more of a transactional model, what's a good use case for a transactional model? Let's see.
I don't know.
Paul.
I'm trying to think.
Oh, y'all showed one already.
Yeah, we were talking about
Right.
right. So a banking, a banking environment, right, where you're meeting certain thresholds. You're looking for risk decisions. In fact, I'll use one of my own. One that we're building for a energy trading company, where again now we're looking at actual trades. We're looking at IM ingest. We're looking at email scraping. We're looking at Twitter feeds. We're looking at weather data, and trying to evaluate whether a particular trade was valid or invalid. Normally, in the current environment, that's a 2, 3, 4 week long effort to go back and try to find an anomalous trade and then determine why it was an anomalous trade. In our case, we can then, we're able to give them near real-time feedback and near real-time alerting that this particular Twitter handle is talking to this Twitter handle, who are both traders on the floor, and they're colluding to set the price for a particular item, and that price shouldn't be that because of this weather data and this other piece of information elsewhere in the system. So again, business rules being pushed to the application layer. So in both of those cases, it's a custom application, and in some cases we're able to amalgamate output from existing legacy applications and just some logic running on MarkLogic, and then send out alerts or do similar functions.
Thanks.
So, go ahead.
Simple question.
Yep.
Have y'all had any use cases with like healthcare providers?
Yeah.
Several, yeah. What's any
On the
specific
provider
question
side.
or
Not insurance, on the provider side.
on the provider side? So
So working with like paper charts, prescriptions, orders, referrals, using that to do analysis.
we have one in flight right now that I don't want to get too much detail on because it's a current project.
Okay.
But it's on the provider side. It's what we're doing is we're actually providing patient care recommendations based on the customer or the patient's EMR, and you bringing in recommendations from external sources for treatment plan, pharmaceuticals, and then actually passing some of that information back to billing as well. But it's a multinodal type of an architecture, so a nurse can walk into a patient's room with their iPad and have all of that information available, have their entire medical history and what they're allergic to and everything else before they even walk in the door. And then they can actually get recommendations for treatment. So it's a way to speed up the patient interaction part of things. It's essentially a patient 360 type of an application.
So another example is WebMD is using MarkLogic for the dashboard.
Right, WebMD. Thank you. That's a good one. That's one before that precedes my time. But WebMD is using MarkLogic for its dashboard. Yeah, he gets a T-shirt.
All right, so I put up here just some resources for you, and I will send this deck out to everybody. I know, I think I've got your list. If not, I'll get it. But just as I mentioned earlier, all of our training is free. You are welcome to go and do that whenever you've got the time. We have 1-day courses, 2-day courses, 4-day courses, but it's full-blown instructor-led training. We have a free developer download. Takes you about 15 minutes to download it. You can put it on your laptop and start playing with it. If you want to try to go into production at a low cost, we actually offer it through AWS for 99 cents a minute, if you so choose to do that. We also have produced, so one of our customers is Wiley Publishing, the creator of the Dummies books. Out on the table, I had these little cards around Enterprise NoSQL for Dummies. That's a free download. You're welcome to go out and download that ebook. It's about 50 pages. It's dummies written, right? It's pretty simple, but I think it'll start to answer some questions for you as a supplement as you go forward from this event when it comes to NoSQL. And it gets into some of a little more nitty-gritty than what we did today.
And once you download, or if you download the developer license, inside that you'll find what we call an application builder. It's a very, very easy GUI to follow to rapidly build out some prototype applications, suck in, ingest some data, see the kind of faceted searches you can do, things of that nature. Very, very simple to follow. You guys should have no problems at all. Most people are able to set stuff up with 20, 30 minutes. Even our SEs will use that on occasion. Going into a customer site, and while we're sitting in a meeting, they're grabbing some data sources, combining them, and show the customer value before the end of a meeting. So it's very quick, very rapid development, and that's really the whole point of NoSQL in general and MarkLogic specifically is faster time to results. You can bring things together that you never thought that you could bring together. You can identify data that you never really realized that you had. And find actual information out of all of the data that's floating around out there, and do it very, very quickly.
Any other questions? All right, so I have 2 questions. Got 2 T-shirts, and as we talked about, you reimagine, right? Okay, so for those of you that might be paying attention, you got to raise your hand. Can't call out, and I'll do my best to kind of find the right person or the person that raised their hand first. What year? You can't raise your hand already. What year did the term NoSQL become popularized? Yes, sir.
1998.
No, when it became popularized. Yes, sir.
2009.
2009. Good job.
The first answer was when the term was coined.
Yes. Not popularized. Thank you. Sorry.
It was popular to him.
Yeah, yeah, it was popular for him. Okay, next one. Last one. Remember, raise your hand. What are the 4 different types of NoSQL databases? Right there.
Graph, wide column, key value, and document.
Are you reading it?
He took notes. It's important.
All right. Thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, we'll be around for a little while.